Housing activists and local citizens associations have been squatting at a mid-rise building in Burnaby since Saturday. Yesterday, the group led by Ivan Jury and the Alliance Against Displacement held a press conference shortly after a court order came down telling the squatters they needed to leave and the RCMP would be enforcing it active immediately. However, as of Friday morning, no arrests have been made and the squatters are still there. Local residents are upset that much of the older rental housing in these mid-rises around Burnaby's Metrotown are being lost and replaced with newer builds of more density. And here again, we see what is a protest for regular middle-class and working poor folk hijacked by radical activists who only want to see 100% social housing built and paid for by the taxpayer. Ivan Jury is not new to the housing activist scene. In fact, back in 2010, he burned some of his bridges back when he was working for the Downtown East Side Neighborhood Council. You see, he and a crowd he was leading crashed a meeting for block approval of a mixed housing development on East Hastings. But Mr. Jury took it much further than that. According to this Vancouver Courier story from 2010, he launched a campaign of intimidation against Mayor Robertson and Vision Vancouver councillor Carrie Jang. It ultimately led to threatening late-night phone calls to Jang's home, which he says has his 2 children on edge to this day. And just recently, Mr. Jury was front and center in Victoria at another housing protest just a couple of weeks ago. That did lead to a minor altercation with police. Mr. Jury did take questions during the press conference yesterday, and I was able to ask him a few. I began with his much publicized demand that the federal government spend billions on 77,000 social housing units per year.
The reason we have that number is that we've calculated there's over 100,000 homeless people in British Columbia, and that we need 10,000 units of social housing a year for 10 years in order to deal with that backlog, the backlog of a lack of housing starts for 3 decades, and to take these people up off the street. So BC is about 13% of the population of the country, so we ramped that up to 77,000.
I followed that up by asking about the social mix style developments planned for the downtown east side, like the one he opposed in 2010.
This demonstration is coordinated with the tent city at 58 West Hastings, and we stand with all of the demands of the people at the tent city there, including the disastrous social mix policies that erode affordable housing stocks in the downtown east side by escalating gentrification that are subsidized by the government and don't actually turn out any social housing at costs that low-income people can afford.
Finally, I asked him what he thought about those who had to say that densification and an increase in supply is a big solution to the problem of real estate prices here in the Lower Mainland.
To the cult of supply and demand, we reply that the only supply that we need is social housing, is non-market housing. That's the supply that we've been missing. That's the supply that hasn't been built for 30 years. And that's the supply that was the only supply that will actually reduce pressure on the rental stock.
As you can see, nothing short of massive taxpayer-funded social housing from government will satisfy these radical activists. But really, they aren't representing those who actually do suffer from these dem evictions. Most residents wouldn't even qualify for the kind of social housing Mr. Jury is calling for. That's why I was happy to talk after the press conference with a much more reasonable leader of the Metrotown Residents Association. Here, let's have a look what he had to say.
Our councillors have been silent on this. My MP, Kennedy Stewart, has been silent on this issue. Right? He's all for social housing, but this is not social housing. This is market housing that is being lost in his riding. So Kennedy Stewart needs to speak up. Kathy Corrigan, the mayor's wife, is my MLA, and she refuses to speak up on this. She's retiring. The new councillor who wants to replace her is Ann Kang. She's been silent on this. If the NDP forms government, this is going to continue. If the Liberals form government, this is going to continue. So I'm very disappointed in the local leaders in Burnaby for not standing up for renters, and I think renters are on their own.
Interesting to see such criticism of the left-wing Burnaby council and mayor, his NDP MLA, and his NDP MP. Wait, I thought the NDP was supposed to be the party that stood up for the poor, vulnerable, and helped our most in need. You know, this issue is not simply black and white, or gentrification is good and housing activism is bad. I do think we need to be very careful about how much market housing we tear down in favor of new high-end condos and townhouses. You know, these may inevitably get snapped up and held onto as investment properties or as security for many of the thousands of millionaire immigrants we've invited into our province the past 10 years. For the Rebel.media, I'm Christopher Wilson.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.